Hello and welcome back to Sports Etiquette with Evans and Evan. We are about to hit you with a very football themed episode. We're getting excited. The NCAA is pretty much 2 weeks already into their season, and the NFL is 2 days away from playing. 2 days. That's it. We're gonna hit on some contract negotiations, some early retirements, and then just in general some points that we feel are big for the upcoming season. So Evans, why don't we start with some college football from this week? And
do we have to?
I'm sorry, I know you're a Gamecocks fan, and look, my Wildcats did even worse in week 0, as they call it these days. But
I like the Gamecocks and I like the Seminoles.
So you at least have a backup plan.
But not anymore.
Yeah, well,
Plan A and Plan B have failed.
Yeah, same with my Bruins and my Wildcats. So what were a few takeaways that you had from this past weekend?
Specifically about the whole college football season in general, I think it's going to be a season of just weirdness and upsets.
100%.
Like, I really think that when we get to the Final Four, it's going to be every team has one loss.
Right.
I mean, it's just everyone seems like they have a tough schedule, and everyone seems like they're kind of losing to teams that they definitely shouldn't. I mean, we saw Tennessee lost to Georgia State.
Yeah.
Bad loss.
Bad.
They paid them about $1 million to be there.
Yeah, and they still took the loss.
Yeah, my cousin was there, and he was pretty depressed.
Oy.
And Purdue lost to Nevada.
I watched that game, and they have an amazing tight end and an amazing receiver.
And an amazing running back, but he tried to do too much that game.
100%.
And I was watching it with a bunch of Purdue people, and they, the whole time before the game, were like, yeah, this guy is he's an NFL guy, and he's probably going to be a Heisman contender this year.
Wow.
And he fumbled at least 2 times and bobbled a punt and turned it over again. And it really cost them the game against a Nevada team that was not very good.
Oh, no. And you could even see in the last few minutes when they were driving, that freshman quarterback, he just had the mojo. Purdue just they weren't in it in the same way that Nevada was like, look, this is probably the biggest game on our schedule all year, and we're going to steal this one in front of our home crowd.
Yeah. I mean, talking about freshman quarterbacks, the freshman quarterback for North Carolina killed.
That's very true.
And it really kind of hurt. I felt a little bad for Will Muschamp.
Okay.
Through all the seething hatred that I was feeling for him at that time, because he made some pretty bonehead call plays. Just not going in for a 4th and 1, specifically when we were on their 40 and their offense was on fire. We punted it to them, lined them up with a 1, and then they immediately just ran up the middle, got 25 yards. Just horrible.
Right.
And so if you remember, though, and this is why I love the soap opera that is college football, especially when it comes to coaches, Matt Brown, out of coaching for almost a decade almost.
At least half of one.
Yeah. I mean, he was, and if we remember, he was the great coach for Texas back in the day, won a national championship there, and named his successor. Not many people remember this. His successor was Will Muschamp. Mm-hmm. He had named him that he was going to be the guy who took over, and a lot of people didn't like the fact that he was naming a successor to the team, and so they kind of ran him out of town. I mean, Will Muschamp has always been a really good defensive coordinator.
Right.
And, I mean, you wouldn't have been able to see it in that North Carolina game if you watched the second half. But that freshman quarterback got rolling, man, and he just torched us the whole game. He made him look like Cam Newton.
Oh, God. Well, and then there was just a couple of things that I'm going to keep it SEC real quick. And just a few things that I noticed was that, first off, I thought Auburn should have lost the game to Oregon. I thought that in the first half they got severely outplayed. But it just goes to show the pure talent that the SEC teams have is that they literally had just too much depth. I mean, they had a quarterback making their first start who was a lifelong Auburn fan who had probably more pressure on him due to his name and due to his status than anybody starting in the SEC to start the season. And they should have lost, but because they had so much pure talent on the team, they still win. And that's the difference between the SEC and the rest of the Power 5 conferences.
Well, Bo Nix beat out a superstar other quarterback. We talked about it on a
we
previous
did.
episode.
Uh-huh.
And I mean, Bo Nix, we're talking Mr. Alabama, just like the stud guy that you'd want on the big shot freshman.
Exactly.
You know, big guy coming in, and man, he made a statement in that game. I think.
Well, and he had turned the ball over early. He looked like a freshman.
He did,
which was kind of refreshing. I mean, you see these guys go out there and they, their first game they throw for 500 yards and 6 touchdowns. And you're like, who are they playing? But to go back to a point, I actually happened to be watching way more football this weekend than I anticipated, and so I watched a lot of SEC because that's what gets broadcast out here. And I watched Wyoming pretty much dominate Missouri, and they have a new quarterback transferred from Clemson, Kelly Bryant, who I thought was going to be a beast, and they end up losing to a pretty irrelevant team. I mean, let's be real. And then later in the day, earlier in the day, pardon me, you had a situation where you had on the road, like you talked about, Georgia State going into Tennessee, and they beat them. I mean, that just shocked to me. That is something that I understand that Tennessee may not be the cream of the crop, but that place Knoxville's always had this aura to it.
They're supposed to be, though. I mean, Tennessee's always been historically a good football program.
Right.
They're in the SEC.
Yep.
They're in the Deep South.
Yep.
They're just good at football. You have good football players that come out of this state.
Right.
But really, that program has been off the rails since Lane Kiffin.
Yeah, well, and then
really it goes all the way back to Lane Kiffin, man.
Yeah, no, you're right, and they had that one magical year when they had Alvin Kamara and a couple other guys, and they
squandered it though.
They did.
They totally squandered it.
Right, and then the other game that I was looking for that I wanted to mention was that Ole Miss went into Memphis and lost. I mean, they only put up 10 points, and they're a team that's kind of known for being rough and having a great defense. Granted, they only gave up 15 points on the road, but still, that's a big loss for the SEC because Memphis, I mean, they've always been okay, but it's not like they were the best.
Memphis is a team you should beat.
Yeah.
It kind of goes without saying, just like North Carolina is a team you should beat.
Yeah, but at least that's our real team. At least,
I mean, they went 2-9 last season.
I know they did, and that's a very good point. But I look at these games and I go, okay, who's playing these guys during the regular season? And
I'm upset, Evan.
You know who is, though? You know who gets all of the guys who lost?
Let me hear it.
Georgia. And that may be the difference in the SEC this year, is that Georgia has the easiest schedule, where South Carolina has literally the most difficult schedule in the country, not just the SEC. You have Georgia has the easiest schedule in the SEC, one of the middle-tier schedules in the whole country. And like you said, because I totally believe that the playoff this year is going to involve one-loss teams. They may be the number one team going in without a loss, but they're going to be a lot less tested. There's no doubt about that. And I was looking at the schedule, I was looking at the SEC games, and I was just like, they play all the teams that lost. Look, that might be the difference, because they're at the 5 right now. They're 1 point, or one place out of the playoff. It's week 2, it doesn't matter, but still, they're on the brink as it is. So that might be the difference. While Bama's playing, Auburn, they're playing Mizzou at home.
Yeah, I think that's a fantastic point.
Yeah.
I mean, do we want to get into a little bit with the Jake Bentley situation? Because I think me and you are
I'll
smelling...
let you hit on that a little bit. That's a little home for you.
Man, because I got to get this off my chest. I got to get this off my chest. So, after Jake Bentley... Basically, Jake Bentley threw for 140-something yards and 2 interceptions. And they were bad interceptions.
Bad. And for those of you that don't know, Jake Bentley is the senior starting quarterback for the University of South Carolina Gamecocks. He's played the last 33 games in a row he started, and so he was expected to kind of have a breakout year, even though they've said that every year. So just to give a little context, Evans is going to go on about that.
Right, yeah. I was so on fire about this, I didn't even preface it. So thank you, Evan.
Yeah.
But, so everyone called for his head after that game.
Mm-hmm.
And then, I mean, me and you, we watched this game. We saw Jake Bentley walk off the field into the locker room.
Totally fine.
And now all of a sudden he has a broken foot that could make him either miss 6 weeks or as long as the whole season.
Right.
And I just, like, I don't believe that I don't believe that he's injured. I know it's a horrible thing to say. I know it's a horrible accusation to bring upon Will Muschamp, the whole South Carolina team, their medical staff, and Jake Bentley, and like,
because he's a good guy, and that's one thing.
He's always behaved himself.
He's always been a decent guy. He's always never lived up to the hype, but he comes across as a good guy. And you know, we were discussing this earlier, and I completely agree with you. I don't know about this injury. I mean, you see even a guy like Cam Newton in the preseason, who's a big, tough guy, walk off in a walking boot, and next thing you know, this guy's out for the year. I mean, Cam Newton's prepared to play week 1.
Look, I either think it's something like Jake Bentley hurt himself that night, maybe getting into some things where he wasn't supposed to be, or maybe getting a little, like, rowdy, maybe some things that might hurt his reputation in Columbia. I don't know. I don't have anything to back that up, so I'm not trying to say that.
Right.
But I'm saying I think just the way this whole thing has been handled very quickly and very hush-hush. I mean, this guy was like, he was the number 3 quarterback in the SEC last season, even though he sucked.
Right.
I mean, to put it bluntly. I mean, so everyone was like, and he won the Peyton Manning camp this summer,
right?
Which is like extremely prestigious, and he was in there with all these different really good quarterbacks.
Even
across
Tua
the
was there.
Yeah, he beat out Tua and like all these guys.
Exactly.
And, I mean, he won it out of all these guys. So, and he looked very mechanically sound at the first half of the game, but when crunch time hit and the defense wasn't stopping the other team, like he was really. I told one of my buddies on the phone. He was like that guy who's freaking out and telling everyone else not to freak out. He's like, everybody calm down, calm down. And it's like, dude, you're the only one freaking out over here.
Right, that's fantastic.
You're very nervous.
Yeah, that's a good way to put it. See, and we're called Sports Etiquette with a question mark for a reason, because we do bring up controversial topics like this. It's just, we're real, and we see these things, and we go, look, we've been injured, we've seen people get injured. There's no way this guy just casually walks off after having a terrible game and is okay. And one of the funniest things that Evans told me earlier is he's like, uh-oh, he might be out for the year. He hasn't redshirted yet. Does that mean we have another year of Jake Bentley?
It could be. If he has to have surgery, he played in that first game. He wasn't redshirted as a freshman. He was one of those guys who left high school early, too.
Yeah.
Because he was like, I'm ready. So, and he came in and we didn't have anyone else. And Muschamp was pretty new. So he pretty much threw him into the fire. And he played okay. And we were like, okay, so we can pretty much train this guy. And by the time he's a senior, he'll be great. And then we had that North Carolina game.
Yeah.
And I mean, everything just melted down. But there could be a silver lining to this. Because a lot of people wanted the 4-star freshman Ryan Holinsky to start.
Okay. So it might be the appropriate end to an era and beginning to a new one.
And he is getting the start.
He is. Now, one thing that I want to bring up, it's a little bit more positive, is some people that actually surprised me this week, and who I thought were borderline Heisman candidates or borderline good players in general, and they came out and surprised me. Now, first, I do want to talk about Jalen Hurts and how he's going into a system where we know there's guys that have won back-to-back Heisman trophies. We know that he has CeeDee Lamb. He has, a weapon there and a couple others. He's got a good tight end. But I think that there's nobody, with the exception of possibly Kelly Bryant, but it doesn't seem like he's as motivated, a guy who has a chip on his shoulder like that. I mean, he did the first game where somebody had over 100 passing yards and 3 touchdowns, over 100 rushing yards and 3 touchdowns since Johnny Manziel was playing.
Yeah. I mean, there's a few words you could use to describe his performance. Dazzling.
Yeah.
Incredible.
Right.
Jaw-dropping.
Yep.
At times. I mean, I love Jalen Hurts, man. I just think he's a tough dude.
And he got robbed at Bama.
I mean, Tua's a better quarterback.
There's no doubt.
Let's be real.
There's no doubt.
In the passing system that Alabama likes to have and the quarterbacks, that's why those, the small white boy type was so big at Alabama for a long time because those guys could just drop back. The AJ McCarrons of the world, those small white guys that can just run back real quick and just bomb it for 60 yards. Yeah. And now, I mean, obviously, Saban went out and found a 6'5" Hawaiian guy who can do that for him.
And his brother, who he managed to coax over to come there for the years following. But it was just one of those things. The reason I say he got robbed is because I really don't think that there's any different outcome to those games if he plays. I know Tua came in and had a great second half and won it for him, but I really believed in him as a player. So that's why I say he was robbed. I also believe in college it's not as much as a business as the NFL in the sense of playing time. And look, if you've been there for a while and you guys are in the national championship, I mean, shoot, I'd give you at least another half. But, I'm a little bit more liberal when it comes to that. So
that's a good point, though.
It's like you've put in the work, you've put in the time.
Yeah.
And I'm going to have this guy just come in and
there was a time in college football and in, school sports where, seniority means something.
Yeah, totally. I mean, even in high school sports, it was, who's the senior leader on the team?
Right.
Who are we going to look up to?
And I think now we're in this era where it's like, we're looking for the young guns, so if we get one freshman star, we can build our team around that.
Yeah. Yeah.
Which is not a bad thing to do, but it does kind of screw over guys like Jalen Hurts or Kelly Bryant.
Right.
Like guys who really did, and I mean, at least the Clemson fans bashed Kelly Bryant out. Like, the fact that Dabo wouldn't even give him a ring. So sad. Just classless.
So sad. And speaking of that, I do want to rip on Trevor Lawrence real quick.
Oh.
I'm
all ears.
I think he had a terrible game.
Really?
Oh, my God. I was watching him. And Georgia Tech, granted, they're not a slouchy first opponent. I mean,
they're not as good as they once were. They lost their big coach, but they're Division I. They're a good
but it's
program.
Not Louisiana State Tech A&M.
Something ridiculous. Yeah, they're a Division I program.
Yeah.
They get good recruits.
Now, the guy, he had 23 opportunities to throw the ball. Only completed 13 of them. And had 2 completions to the other team as 2 interceptions. And when you're putting up only 168 yards and your team's putting up 52 points, granted, their running back went off, and I had him on my fantasy team, and he was just so much fun to watch. I mean, only 12 carries to get 205 yards and 3 touchdowns. That's exciting. He's taken to the house almost every time. I mean, he had a 90-yard touchdown run. That was incredible. And I'd say his name, but I just can't pronounce it, to be honest with you guys. And so when it comes to Lawrence, I was watching him play, and he didn't look like he knew how to read a defense. He didn't look like a leader. Almost completely different than last year. And I was shocked because this was a guy who I thought was going to walk away with the Heisman. You got Tua's, you got the Hurts, you got whoever it may be. I thought that this guy, because he was on Clemson and because they came in ranked number 1, was just going to walk away with the Heisman. And instead, I take him out of the conversation for the whole year now.
Really?
Oh, yeah. I mean, I get it. He ran for a touchdown. And certain things like that, were good. They still won by almost 50 points, but the way that he looked was concerning to me. Just absolutely concerning. But then again, shout out to the Clemson running back who it just was spectacular to watch. It was really fun.
I mean, really, Trevor Lawrence, everyone considered him, at least in South Carolina anyway, and I know a lot of other places too, consider him to be the best quarterback in college football.
Right.
And he definitely did not play like it. He really definitely did not play like it at all.
Well, and this is kind of my point, is the backup quarterback played for a little bit, and he went 5 of 7, so a much better completion percentage, less opportunity to mess up, with 53 yards and a touchdown.
You know who his stats were very eerily similar to?
Who?
Jake Bentley's.
Geez.
I mean, look, 168 yards. What he threw for 20 more yards,
Right.
And
right.
What?
Yeah,
I mean, Jake Bentley threw for a touchdown as well,
and they're arguably
he also threw for 2 interceptions.
It's also very similar competition. You know,
Yeah.
Georgia Tech and North Carolina are just about the same.
I would say so. Yeah.
So
two
just,
ACC opponents.
Yeah, exactly.
Two teams kind of like supposed to be down on their luck, like not a big year for them.
Yeah.
Like, I think they're both starting. I don't know about Georgia Tech, but I know UNC has their freshman quarterback.
Well, Georgia Tech actually uses 3 different quarterbacks.
So they're using.
So they have
venture
no
to
idea
guess one of them
going
is
on.
a
freshman. Well, also the concerning thing to me is that he only completed more than one pass to 2 different receivers, Lawrence. So when it comes to having
he's got his favorites.
In the past, Clemson has had the Sammy Watkins, the DeAndre Hopkins, certain people like that. Great players. I don't think that they have that game, changer. I know that they have a few good guys. They got Higgins. He's projected to be almost a first-round pick. But I was a little disappointed in them as a whole, passing-wise.
I will say this. I think that Trevor Lawrence set the stage to lose his Heisman candidacy for this year.
No doubt.
They have Texas A&M next week.
Yeah.
I mean, if he plays great in that game, no one's even going to think about this Georgia Tech game.
Yeah, that's the glory of football is that you can have one bad week and ultimately it really doesn't matter.
What have you done lately? What are you doing lately?
Mm-hmm.
And that means so much in this game. And Texas A&M is a team that's looking to get in that top 4.
Yep.
And they're a team that's good enough to be there. So if they can beat that team and if he can play well, everyone's going to notice and everyone's going to respect that. But if he throws, starts throwing up to potatoes and is just like Pick City and is just like eyeing down these 2 receivers and then taking sacks, I mean, people are going to write him out of that conversation real quick.
Now, I watched the Texas A&M game because I have a running back in fantasy football, and I was honestly, I thought Mund was going to be a beast. I thought they were going to be great, and they were a little underwhelming. So I'm actually very interested to see how they do against a Clemson. They were just a little bit underwhelming for me. Too many mistakes, but Jimbo Fisher's a great coach, and you never know what's going to happen. Now, why don't we move on to some professional sports? Why don't
Let's talk about guys who are getting paid.
Or not getting paid in certain cases. But why don't we start with the contract negotiation of Ezekiel Elliott, and why don't we get into Melvin Gordon while we're at it? So the rumor is, as of an hour ago, and today is Tuesday, September 3rd at about 2 o'clock, that Zeke has agreed in principle to a contract with the Cowboys, making him the highest paid running back in the league. Now, for all you fantasy owners out there, that's probably some pretty happy news, especially because you definitely took him in the first round. But also, just in general, to have a amazing player back in the NFL and to not have a Le'Veon Bell situation, number 2, very, very interesting because, look, if they started having people retire early and hold out for contracts, the NFL's hand's going to be forced at some point, just like Jerry Jones was here.
We're looking like the beginning of replacements.
Uh-oh.
We're going to get some scab guys in there pretty soon. But I hear that the rumor is it's 6 years, $90 million, which is a huge amount for a running back.
Yeah.
Easily makes him the highest paid running back in the league.
Right.
That's just the Twitter rumors as of now. But it seems pretty accurate. Thinking about what Todd Gurley got.
Yeah.
It's a bit, it's higher than that, obviously.
Yeah.
But not by, an insane amount, I don't think. I think this comes down to Jerry Jones wants a Super Bowl. And he's willing to pay and do anything. I mean, we all knew he was willing to pay. He's been very clear if there was no cap rule in this league.
He'd have an amazing team.
This team would be probably stacked with every Pro Bowler in the league.
Yeah. Look, and Jerry Jones the whole time was just kind of such a dick, you know. He was like, "Oh, look, we don't need a running back to win the championship. You know, the last guy was on our team when Emmett Smith was on the Cowboys and we went to the Super Bowl and he was the rushing champ." It's like, all right, I get that, and to be honest with you, I'm one of those people that truly believes that there are athletes everywhere when it comes to football, and that there's tons of guys who played well in the NCAA who probably deserve a spot in the NFL. But Zeke is generational. Zeke is amazing. And that offensive line's getting no younger. And honestly, Dak Prescott hasn't really gotten that much better. So if they do want to keep their window open, Jerry Jones had to pay.
But he's going to get a lot better, though, because I got him for fantasy this year.
Yeah, me too.
Dak Prescott. So,
Really?
yeah, he's going to... I'm hoping for a great year for Dak, but not so much the Cowboys.
Yeah.
But, look, what does this mean for the league? For running backs now? Running backs are mostly thought of as, like, you know, you're going to get how many, like maybe 6 great years out of them?
Max.
If they're a good running back.
Right.
Like, above average. If they're a generational guy, you get 8.
Right.
Like, so what does this mean now that this guy just got 90 mil?
What it means is that owners and GMs have understood, and I think that this stems somewhat from the MLB. I think that the owners have finally understood that these guys aren't going to pay out their whole contract, and that if they give them a 15-year contract, 6 years in the case of Zeke, let's say, it's 15 years in the case of the MLB, that eventually it's going to be a decent salary because things will go up and they'll be able to trade him, or they'll retire and they'll save that money anyways. So I think in this case, they're looking at it like, if we get 4 years of Zeke and we trade him, or 4 years of Zeke and he retires, or 4 years of whatever, I think they're thrilled. Because he won't be the highest paid running back by that point. His salary probably won't be too obnoxious to trade. And I think that's just what the reality that the GMs are coming up with is that, look, we're going to sign you for the long term, but we might not be looking that far ahead.
Yeah, I mean, but we're also seeing the Cowboys specifically just locking up their talent. Everybody's getting locked down, big money deals. I mean, today they just signed, who was it? Collins?
Yeah, the left guard.
The left guard.
Yeah, no, he, like I said, that line's not getting any younger, and they were the best in football.
Or he's actually a right tackle, Lyle Collins.
Okay.
Yeah,
my fault.
No problem. It's kind of hard to keep track of the O-line guys like that.
And they switch around.
But, yeah, he got the $9 million signing bonus, and they're saying it's up to, like, that he got, like, a $50 million, like, 5-year extension. I mean...
Well, and it's also very
good for him because he was an undrafted free agent.
Yeah,
so
that's the end of the bag.
Yeah.
But also, I think that Dak Prescott's going to be the last of the guys to get the extension. Just in all honesty, I mean, they're working on even Amari Cooper before they're looking at Dak Prescott, and that's very telling, if you ask me. Very telling. Because he wants a ridiculous amount of money. He wants like $30 million a year. A year.
Yeah. I don't know if Dak Prescott... I mean, it's kind of interesting because you see everyone's getting paid. Everyone around you. And Dak had that great year.
Yeah.
I mean, his first year was electric. And he's kind of failed to recapture that as of late. But, I don't know, man. He could be picking the wrong battle. I mean, they're running out of cap space fast. I think after the Zeke deal, it'll be pretty much all gone.
Well, and it's like, all right, you can stay in Dallas and play for the Cowboys in the house that Jerry built and have all these guys around you, or you can go sign for $30 million with like the Bucks or something. You know what I mean? It's like,
well, what I see with the Collins extension is now you've got like close to $250 million invested in that offensive line.
Yeah, and running back. Yeah,
I think what he sees is I can go and get one of these veteran. Like guys like Flacco.
Exactly.
Like one of these guys.
Plug and play guys.
I mean, like who knows in the next like year or two, the guys that are going to go on the market or are going to get traded. Maybe Andrew Luck decides to come back from his European vacation and sign with the Cowboys.
He might, yeah.
That would be Texas wet dream right there, but
There's-
I don't think
there's
that's
people
happening.
dreaming about it already.
I don't
the
think
crazy
that's
thing.
happening.
No, me too.
Yeah, the fact that I even said it though, it's a possibility.
But it is, and it always has been, and that's kind
I
of.
think
the thing.
Colts fans would collectively like riot and storm his house, but
Oh, no doubt. Well, see, that's what I thought Calvin Johnson was doing when he retired. I genuinely thought Calvin was going to take off a year and say, "Look, I'm signing with the Patriots or something." Like, look, I'm done playing for an 0-16 team. I'm going elsewhere. Now let's talk about Melvin Gordon real quick because it looks like they're not in a hurry to make a deal in the sense of the front office. They told him, "Look, we're delaying all talks until the end of the year. If you want to show up and play on your last 2 years of your contract, feel free. We'd love to have you. Otherwise, have all the power to go search for a trade." So now, fantasy-wise, this obviously sucks because anybody that's drafted him may not get him at all. He may pull a Le'Veon Bell, but just in the scheme of football, I mean, this is a guy who had 2 years in a row of being absolutely unbelievable and probably being the most underrated player in the NFL. Or I should say running back in the NFL, because being in a small stadium in the middle of Carson and not even being the most popular team in your area has kind of buried them. And this is a guy who gets 300 carries a year, scores at least 10 touchdowns, and takes away from the passing game that always seems to be banged up due to receivers of the Chargers. So Evans, what's your take on the fact that he might pull a Le'Veon Bell?
I mean, my take is obviously he wants his money.
He wants the
and
money.
he puts up the production and he gets the ball. I mean, he literally carries that team to wins week in and week out. Probably should get paid.
Right.
But I think the Chargers ownership and their front office is dealing with a problem that it's not just exclusive to the NFL. It goes across all of American sports now, where guys on rookie contracts are holding out because they want to get paid.
Right.
I mean,
especially in a violent sport like football.
right, but even you're seeing that bleed over to the NBA.
Yep.
I mean, we're living in this entire like player empowerment movement.
Yeah.
We're seeing like news just get totally flipped on its head. Like guys like wouldn't even think of doing that just like 10 years ago.
Yeah.
If Andrew Luck did what he did 10 years ago, he'd be burned at the stake. He'd be burned at the stake.
Yeah.
I mean, it's just we're living in this era where the players are taking some of their power back. And although I think that's good in a lot of ways, I think it's going to backfire on them in a lot of ways because then you're going to see owners who, let's be honest, they own the team. They pay for the team. They pay these guys salaries. And yeah, you could just make the argument that, oh man, like Evans, pro sports is so profitable. If you're a billionaire, like these guys are clamoring for teams.
Yeah.
But that wasn't always the case.
No, it wasn't.
I mean, just back in 2010, there were 8 NBA teams for sale.
Well, and you have to understand that in the NHL, there's 3 teams that are owned by the NHL because their owners had to bail because they were going bankrupt.
I mean, New Orleans was owned by the league for so long.
Yep. Yeah. No, and you know, also, talking about the player empowerment era, the Chargers said, feel free to seek a trade. So now you're going to let your players be the GM for you? So I can go to the Chiefs and say, give me your second-round pick because I really want to pay with Patrick Mahomes.
But I mean, I think they know that, like, they're doing it anyway. And that's kind of what Melvin Gordon is like. He's been doing a lot of, like, veiled threats that are not so veiled.
Yeah.
I mean, like, he followed the 49ers on, like, Instagram and was, like, just been super public that he's like, oh, yeah, I'll just go and play for another team.
Right.
But it's like, you know, going back to what I was saying before, these owners did make an investment with their money. And so these guys should be like it should be held against them because they're making good profit. They're making a good return on their original investment.
They're being a good
They're not
businessman.
ripping these guys off. These guys live better than most people on the planet.
100%.
Like, they're the 1%. And
they're the 0.1%.
Right.
Yeah.
And I get it. Like, you know, they worked their ass off. They got it out the mud. They did whatever they had to do to get to them to the point where they're the best in their business.
Right.
But at the same time, if you're going to go, I mean, you got the rookie contract. You signed the rookie contract. I mean, do what Joey Bosa did. Don't sign the rookie contract if you don't like the terms.
Right.
And everyone has that right to do that in this country.
Yeah.
If you don't like the terms to a contract, you don't have to sign.
100%. I mean, and you see it in baseball all the time. First round picks get offered $10 million signing bonus. They don't think it's enough, and they go back and play college.
So now Melvin Gordon wants to change the rules and say, "Oh no, I don't like my contract,
Right?
and I want a new contract now."
Yeah.
So I understand the Chargers completely, where they're just like, "No, man, like you're gonna start doing that." I mean, what if we changed the rules on you? You wouldn't like that too much. Like, what if we didn't honor your contract?
Yeah.
Like, you'd sue us. Like,
yeah.
And
No,
it's
very
a bit
weird.
of a double standard on that. And at the same time, you really need to watch out because when the NFL Players Union meets with the NFLs, we all know that streaming money. Hulu's got live sports. Hulu's got money.
Hulu's got money.
Netflix has money. Disney has money. They own ESPN. They want these packages for sports exclusively, and they're willing to pay for them.
Yep.
That money is only going to go up, and the owners are going to take more of a chunk of that because that's exactly what happened in the last NBA Players Union.
Yep.
The players did all this stuff. It was LeBron James, the decision, and oh yeah, we're good. LeBron is also the president of the Players Association right now. So when they got for their meeting, they were like, "Hey, this pie is mostly ours."
Right.
And they were like, "No, we don't like that. Like we want more." It's like, yeah, we'll up the cap, but no. Like we own the teams.
We own the teams. Yeah.
And they drew the line in the sand. And if you're gonna start holding out rookie contracts and you're gonna start playing that game and you want to be empowered, I get that. But you're also going to start playing the game against the rules and do that. I mean, these guys are not going to take care of you.
Right.
And, I mean, you're messing. I mean, I think it's just you got to pick your battles, man. It's a really convoluted and complicated thing.
Yeah.
You got to be very careful about what battles you pick.
Well, and also for me, it's like there's a time appropriation thing where it's like, if you want to complain a little bit and we say we can't help you, and then you play a year and you kick butt, and then you come to us and say, look, I shut my mouth and I played for you under a contract that I didn't like, and I dominated. Now maybe can we negotiate something? I've always thought that was something that people should do more.
Right.
Now. Also, the Earl Thomas injury kind of complicated things.
It's a big risk.
It's a big risk.
I think that scared a lot of players. As it should have.
Yeah.
But at the same time, he got a kind of a good deal.
Look.
For a guy who got really screwed, I mean, they still made sure he was taken care of.
Yeah.
They didn't just hang him out to dry. And I think that's kind of the expectation, especially with these guys who aren't like a Melvin Gordon type.
Yes.
It's like, oh, if I do go, and because a lot of these contracts hold out and happen all the time in smaller ways, and we don't hear about them at all because no one cares.
Right.
So I think if you're one of those guys, you just gotta weigh the options. But
right.
I mean, if you're a big name guy like that, and it's your rookie year, I mean, that could be the kiss of death for your career, and people just start not to like you. I mean, you got to think about it. He's playing in LA.
Yeah.
He's on a good team. The Chargers are supposed to be good.
They're
this
decent,
year.
Yeah.
I mean, they're not the most popular team in LA, but dude, you just missed that by a year because you didn't make the Super Bowl last year.
Right.
I mean, it was pretty even.
Yeah.
Before that.
Yeah. Now, before we let you go into the USA basketball team, I want to just bring up a point that you talked about, and that's how the owners are the owners, and the players are still their employees. And I've always thought that way. I've always thought, look, if I invest $1 billion in this company and then I give you $100,000 on top of that, I'm sorry, but people at McDonald's probably have just about the same amount of health risk, and you don't see them holding out because they can't.
Probably even more. Have you seen what happens
No,
at McDonald's?
Yeah. I'm just talking
Have you
in
seen
general.
the craziness that goes down at McDonald's?
I try to avoid it. I haven't seen it in years. But it's just one of those things where imagine if this became the norm. I'm going to leave it on this. Imagine if holdouts became the norm for every single employer, every single industry. I mean, what if you offer Leonardo DiCaprio $20 million to make a movie and he wants 21, and it ruins an entire multi-million-dollar production because of that? It just doesn't happen.
Well, what if the reverse happened? What if you were promised a 15 grand bonus at the end of the year, and then your company just decided to hold out?
Well, that was where I was heading to.
Yeah.
Is imagine if they did the opposite. You know, imagine if it was, hey, I know I owe you a couple $100 for those overtime hours that you worked, but nah.
Yeah, I mean that would be ridiculous. And even putting it into a sports, like imagine like insert anyone who got paid a lot of money and didn't perform up to expectations. Can they just now take that money away?
Right.
No, they signed a contract, and you never, ever, ever, ever see that happen.
It's a legal,
It's very rare,
binding
if it's ever happened.
document for a reason. So why don't we get off football for a minute,
Yeah.
and let's hear what you had to say about the USA basketball team that happened to play this weekend.
I was so fired up about football, man. Like,
It's the best part of the year.
it's the best part of the year, but it's also like it's got me feeling alive again, and it's got me feeling dead inside again.
Uh-oh.
Because my Carolina Gamecocks suck. But let's get back to my favorite sport.
There we go.
Basketball.
The basketball.
Basketball. And Team USA dodged a bullet.
For the second time already this summer.
And if you want to be, I think they dodged about 4. Because they played Turkey, and they went to overtime, and Turkey missed 4 free throws. Middleton ended up hitting the clutch 2 free throws to win, like as time was expiring. But they only won 93-92.
Right.
Against a Turkey team that's like, it's Turkey.
Yeah.
I don't know. I don't know what to think about this team. I mean, a lot of interesting things kind of happened in that game. Tatum rolled his ankle there at the end, which is pretty heavy.
Well, and just for the whole NBA season in general.
Yeah.
I mean, that's big.
Well, I think that hurts, especially the people who really like to see all the superstars come out and play.
Yeah.
In the USA, and now all the superstars are like, see what happens. And it just kind of sucks because I think you should want to go out and represent your country. You should want to go and get the gold. Like, honestly, I think that's Carmelo Anthony's most redeeming quality for me, as someone who's never been a huge Carmelo fan, is that he is a legend on USA basketball.
Legend.
So good, so clutch. Just one of those guys who could just take it over. And that's a short list of guys there. It's like LeBron, Kobe.
Got MJ. Magic. You know, that's
Magic, MJ.
Yeah.
But even like for like a little bit, sometimes like Wade could do that.
Yeah. Oh yeah.
I mean, and I think it gives you so much, especially if you're a young superstar. So I'm so glad to see Donovan Mitchell and De'Aaron Fox out there.
Right.
And Kyle Kuzma.
Yeah.
Just they're young guys, and I think this is really going to help them out a lot. But I'm really nervous about this team, man. It seems like they haven't really found any identity.
Yeah, and especially with such a great coach in Popovich, you would have thought that he would have figured it out already. But for me, I mean, we grew up with possibly the only team ever that could compete with the Dream Team. With the D-Wades, the LeBrons, the Melos, that team that you're talking about, young Dwight Howard, Chris Paul, exactly. I truly, now I'm biased, I'm younger, truly thought they could compete with the Dream Team.
They could definitely compete.
Yeah, I'm not saying they're going to beat them, but that was when everybody was getting less minutes. Everybody's spotlight was a little less. I mean, if you have 10 good players that play 10, 15 minutes, give you a solid 10, 15 minutes, and no one's getting hurt because of that, or Tatum, he's playing the whole game, he's getting warmed down, there's more chance to get injured. Just certain things like that I don't think these guys pay attention to. The fact that if we got all the best players, you don't have to play the whole game. You don't have to risk as much, and you can sit back, have fun, and do what, like you just said, to me is the greatest thrill in life, which is representing your country.
Yeah. I mean, it really sucks. I mean, you go from having the Dream Team, and, like, those are some of the guys, like, we named, but then you go from having that, and our team is Bam Adebayo.
Yeah.
Harrison Barnes, Jaylen Brown, De'Aaron Fox, Joe Harris, Kyle Kuzma, Brooke Lopez, Chris Middleton, Donovan Mitchell, Mason Plumlee, Jason Tatum, P.J. Tucker, Miles Turner, Kimball Walker, Thaddeus Young.
Oy.
That's the whole team.
Yeah.
That's like made up of a bunch of like three, like the third choice on your team to score, maybe the fourth. That, with the exception of Tatum,
Kimba,
Donovan Mitchell,
and like Middleton because he's
De'Aaron
the second.
Fox.
Yeah, but like, see, my thing is that
Bam Adebayo is really good too. I mean, I think he's going to have a great year. I thought he was better than Hassan Whiteside last season.
Well, and they traded him because of it.
Yeah.
Now, I do want to say one thing really quick in a positive note. Joe Harris, 5 years ago, gets cut by the Orlando Magic and now is playing for Team USA. That is awesome.
I really love
just
that.
want to put that out there. He's not a younger guy. He's not terribly old, but he's not a younger guy who is literally having a career, not just a year, but like the last 2 years. A resurgence of the last 2 years in the sense of he became a true scorer for the Nets, who now we know have a couple superstars and are looking good. And now he's on Team USA. So just in a positive way, congrats to him.
I smiled to myself when I wrote Joe Harris's name down, dude. I was like, good for you, man.
Yeah.
6'6" guard. He's got a sweet stroke. I've always liked that guy.
Exactly.
I mean, even Mason Plumlee, like when I wrote him down, like I've always liked him just because he fights.
Yes.
Like I love to see guys who fight.
I get that. I think he's terrible, though.
I mean, like, look, he's not that great in the NBA, but like I think he's the perfect guy for like a international team. Yeah. Because he's just a guy who's going to get in there and fight.
Yeah.
And he's bigger. I mean, he's pretty much 7 feet.
Yeah.
I mean, he's huge. And he's just a fighter, man. I love those guys. You can give me those guys any day. If you're going to fight for rebounds, like, you're good enough to be on my team.
Hey, effort outweighs talent sometimes. We know that. Mm-hmm. We know that.
Definitely.
Now, let's go back to football for a sec. I'm going to just do a quick little segment about how I truly believe that when it comes to the joys in life, fantasy football's up there. And for me, I think back on it in such a positive light. I mean, I met all of my dad's friends in the sense of, you know, the people he would tell me stories about through his fantasy football league. I met them and I became close with them. I remember every Sunday morning in college waking up at 9:30 to text saying, hey, when can I come over? You know, I'm bringing a 6-pack and we're going to sit down and watch some Red Zone. And I mean, shoot, I got college cable literally to get Red Zone. And I just want to talk about how I know last week I said it revived the NFL, and I truly believe that. And all the money that's being put into it and the specialists and the experts and all that. But I want to talk about the human connection that it creates. I mean, for the rest of my life, barring the friends that I've made, I will always root for a Calvin Johnson, a Hopkins, a LaDainian Tomlinson, a Priest Holmes, certain people like that who I drafted years ago who will always have a special place in my heart. And then there's people like David Johnson who screwed me multiple times and I won't draft them. And when they score a touchdown, I boo them. And, you know, that to me, when it comes to a sport that I didn't grow up with a team here in LA, I didn't grow up playing it because I was a small white kid. And it gives you a perspective on who these players are. And your friends get to come over and literally celebrate and escape for a few hours a week. I don't know many other things that get people together like fantasy football. I know it has to do with football, but I have gotten people who don't know anything about football to enjoy fantasy because they just hear it's fun.
Yeah. Good friend of mine, I actually helped him draft his team 2 days ago, our friend Donnie.
Nice.
And you know Donnie, like, he doesn't watch sports.
Right.
Period. Like,
right.
Doesn't even watch sports. And I helped him draft his team. He was about to pick Tom Brady with the first overall pick.
And you know what? For an outsider, at least that somewhat makes sense.
Yeah, it somewhat makes sense, but I had to hit the brakes.
Yeah.
Here, I was like, dude, big time brakes. Big time brakes. Like, we're not, like, newsflash, man, we're not drafting Tom Brady.
Newsflash, this is not 2010.
Yeah, we are not drafting Tom Brady. Like, if we're drafting a quarterback, it's probably going to be Patrick Mahomes.
That's the only guy.
Patrick Mahomes?
Yeah, exactly.
Like, yeah. But he honestly was at the point where he was like, look, I don't even really want to draft this, like, I don't even really care. And we sat down and drafted it, and we were kind of talking, and we were having some drinks, and got to the end of the draft, and I was like, yeah, so now you've got a good team. Hooked him up with Julio. Got him Joe Mixon.
Yeah.
And he had the 16th pick in his league.
Oh.
Yeah, so he was like dead last.
Yeah.
Yeah, so he ended up really lucking out.
Right.
And all his buddies were hitting him up and just being like, who's drafting for you, dude?
That's
like real
so
tough.
funny.
Like, who's drafting?
Oh
and I was like,
God,
dude, don't say anything.
Don't say anything.
Just be like, dude, what do you mean I'm drafting?
Be like, I put in some research.
Yeah, and they were like, yeah, buddy, yeah. That's exactly what he said, too. He said he put in some research. I was like, you're such an ass clown.
And also, I just love how, like, you can have the argument of, Peyton Manning's better than Tom Brady, and you can bring up stats and Super Bowl rings and whatever you want. But when it comes to fantasy football, it's such an unknown that the arguments between friends are so much fun, even though they're completely irrelevant and ridiculous.
Especially this year with, like, the unknowns.
The unknowns.
Like, I think this year is, like, the year of the unknown.
Yeah.
With the Andrew Luck thing happening, with all the holdouts that have happened, you don't know, like, if, help me out. Jets. Running back.
Oh, Le'Veon Bell.
Le'Veon Bell. I don't know why.
Even if he's going to be a
decent
decent player.
Yeah, if he's going to be good or not. I mean, he's still projected to put over 200 points.
I know, and yet guy hasn't touched the football.
Curtis Samuel and the Panther receivers. It's like, hey, you guys, like, you're supposed to have broken out.
Right. Especially
you, DJ Moore. Like, we drafted you literally one pick before Calvin Ridley. Oh, I want you to break out. Oh, please break out. I got picked you, man.
Right.
Please break out this year.
And then you have guys like, there's Duke Johnson and Carlos Hyde in Houston, and you can sit all day and argue with people and speculate, this is going to be great, this is going to be great, this is going to be bad, this is going to be bad. And that's just what makes it so much fun, because even the quote-unquote experts, like how I grilled Matt Berry a couple weeks ago, just people like that, it's like, there's no real experts, there's no real nothing, and that's kind of refreshing. You can be the best quarterback, you can be the best coach, you can be the best GM, you can be the best businessman, you can be the best whatever. But when it comes to fantasy football, it's really luck. And that's what I love about it, is that it's all about luck.
Well, if you read up and you study and you really are knowledgeable about, with the apps that they have nowadays for fantasy football, it's really easy to do.
I think there's 1.5 million.
Yeah, I mean, you can literally just click the guy's name. You get every, like,
you know
what he ate for breakfast.
Yeah, his wife, and when she goes to the bathroom. Right. It's ridiculous.
Yeah, Todd Gurley took a 2-ounce dump.
Right. No, I'm surprised that they don't give those kind of readings, And you're so right. But the thing is, going back to what I said, is you can prepare all you want. I know people who spend the whole off season creating their own rankings, making notes, and just reading. But their player takes one bad step. Their first round pick, has their offensive lineman roll over his ankle. Doesn't matter. I've lost my first round pick 3 years in a row in my big money league.
Oh, wow.
3 years in a row.
Really?
Yeah.
You've never told me that.
Yeah, well, I don't like talking about it.
Oh, yeah, that's true. That's true.
But yet, the first year, I came in the money. The next 2 years, I ate it. But still, you just never...
So who were the guys that got hurt?
I had David Johnson.
Yeah?
One of the reasons I won't draft him again. I took 3 years ago, I was in college, and admittedly, I was a little bit stoned and a little bit drunk during the draft. And I selected Adrian Peterson, who just didn't do literally anything. And then last year, I took, what was it, Le'Veon Bell or something like that. I don't remember what it was, but because it was so scarring. But it's just one of those things where I lost AP, my first pick, and I still came in the money. So you really never know.
Would you rather draft a guy who gets injured? Or would you rather draft a guy who just holds out for the entire season?
Honestly, I'm going to go with a holdout just because injuries are more frustrating in the sense of that guy was actually playing. There wasn't a known risk when you drafted him. If you draft Melvin Gordon today in the first round, that's your problem. I mean, that's something you just got to live with.
I'd say first off, call your family, get help.
Yeah.
Meth is
Rehab.
really going to screw you up.
Yeah. Yeah, you got to stop smoking crack bowls if you're drafting him. But you just to that point, yeah, no, I would definitely, because at least the guy got injured during the he was at least on the field.
That's a good
That's just
point.
kind of how I feel.
That's a good point. I think I'd take the latter.
Yeah,
if the guy's just sitting there holding out, and like I know he's on the couch just like I am,
yeah, yelling
like looking, he's probably looking at his fantasy stuff too. I'm gonna be freaking out. Like I picked you fuck.
Right. What are you doing? Get out on the field. But and yeah, see, but this segment is exactly, look at the fun we're having and just the laughs from fantasy football and
fantasy football is fun, man.
It's the best.
It's fun.
And I just want to give out one last shout out before we wrap out here. I want to thank fantasy football for having me not have to pay for a psychologist or a therapist, whatever it be, because the stress decrease that I get just from yelling at people on the TV every Thursday, Sunday, and Monday, you don't need to go to a therapist.
Yeah.
Just yelling at these guys, you dumb, blah, 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 I can't believe you just, got stuffed at the goal line 4 times in a row. Those kind of things, that takes away a whole week's stress.
And I don't need to yell at people in traffic.
Yeah, exactly. No more road rage for us.
No more road rage.
Anyways, thank you to everybody who has been continuing to listen, and anybody who stuck through this entire football-laden podcast.
Thank you, thank you, thank you.
Thank you very much, and enjoy the upcoming football season.